Back in 2015, a new study about chocolate was heavily publicized around the world. News sources in 20 countries picked up the press release put out by the researchers. The reason? The study said eating chocolate every day could help you lose weight. It's like the best of both worlds. Eat your chocolate and lose weight too. Who wouldn't want to read about that?
Chocolate.
There was a catch though. The study was complete junk.
This was one of the biggest health hoaxes ever. Now, eating chocolate to lose weight. A group of journalists and researchers came up with a bogus study just to see how easy it was for bad science to get published.
Millions were fooled.
That's right. John Bohannon, a journalist and scientist, and Peter Onakin, a TV reporter from Germany, wanted to expose how susceptible we are to bad research. The duo ran a seemingly full-fledged study, including subjects, a doctor, and a statistician. They had a website called the Institute of Diet and Health. Over the course of 3 weeks, one group of subjects ate 1.5 ounces of dark chocolate every day, while the other group didn't. The study showed that the subjects who ate chocolate did lose weight. How did they fool millions of people? Welcome to the first episode of the In Defense of Science podcast. My name is Alec Nelson, and I am a journalism student at Utah State University. In this podcast, we will talk about some of the issues surrounding science in today's world. Today, we will be talking about our problem with communicating and understanding science.
Science affects the environment. Science affects medicine. Science affects your family. It affects your health. It affects all of these inescapable qualities of the world, right? These things that you can't get away from, you can't shelter yourself from. And so if you want to be an informed citizen, a part of being an informed citizen, of course, you need to consume news. You need to consume politics. Science is a part of that, of what you need to consume to be an informed citizen, because it is all around you. Science is surrounding you.
That was Luke Ganji-Wellman. He's currently a graduate student at the University of Utah, studying neuroscience, and also works as a STEAM education coordinator at the Leonardo, a science museum in Salt Lake City. You'll hear more from him throughout the episode. Let's go back to that chocolate study hoax. What exactly was so wrong with it? First off, the Institute of Diet and Health that supposedly sponsored the study was nothing more than a website set up by the researchers. The study also included only 15 people, which is a pretty small sample size. In addition, 18 different measurements were taken from each of these subjects. In research, there's an idea that if you measure for enough variables, then you are bound to find at least one thing that correlates with what you're testing by chance. This method easily produces false positives and is known as p-hacking, or data dredging. Here's John Bohannon explaining to CBS what they did.
That's the thing that's confusing about experiments, is that even if you get a result that looks really interesting, like, for example, we found that people who ate chocolate lost weight faster. That's true. They did lose weight faster. But what you have to understand is that there's noise in body weight. You know, sometimes you weigh a few pounds more, sometimes you weigh a few pounds less. That's just the universe. And that pretty much is the best explanation for why we got a little bump in weight loss for our chocolate group. We used so few people and we measured so many things, we were basically bound to get some kind of result. We didn't know that it would be weight loss. It could have been something else. It could have been, your headlines over the past month could have been, chocolate helps you sleep better. And we would have duly published that and built a campaign around that. Just so happens weight loss did the trick.
Once the research was done, Bohannon wrote a very professional-sounding research article and submitted it to a fake academic journal. One that might seem trustworthy on first glance, but has little or no review process. This isn't the only example of a general misunderstanding of science. To help illustrate this point, just listen to this soundbite and try to decide whether coffee could be the solution to all your problems or could kill you.
A lot of folks in our newsroom perked up when they heard about 2 new studies linking coffee to a longer life.
Research has suggested coffee may protect people from problems like diabetes and liver disease and might even lead to longer life.
According to a new study, at least 6 cups of Joe a day increases a person's risk for developing heart disease by as much as 22%.
A new study on the health benefits of coffee says 4 cups may be the perfect amount for your heart.
Some people can't start their day without their mug of coffee. While a morning or afternoon jolt of Java has its benefits, a dietitian is saying saying coffee could also add to belly fat.
New research says a cup of coffee could help you lose weight.
A new study adds to growing evidence that drinking coffee may help you live longer.
The new study has found a cup of coffee a day can lower the risk of chronic kidney disease.
Researchers want people to know that caffeine withdrawal is real and brings fatigue, headache, and difficulty focusing.
A judge ruled coffee shops must serve coffee with a cancer warning in California. The chemical called acrylamide is produced in the roasting process.
Coffee's potential health benefits have been known for a while, says Mayo Clinic nutrition expert Dr. Donald Hensrud.
Did you know that caffeine causes a temporary mental disorder? But it's just temporary, so it's okay, right?
While the current digital age has brought unprecedented access to information, it isn't always necessarily good information. As you know, if you've ever fallen prey to a celebrity death hoax or a false news article.
Where'd you hear that?
The internet.
And you believed it?
Yeah, they can't put anything on the internet that isn't true.
Where'd you hear that? The internet.
So how do we end up with bad scientific information? Is it a money problem, a journalist problem, or maybe a problem with academia? Turns out it might be a mix of all three. First off, let's talk about money. Many websites rely on advertising to survive. The larger your audience, the more you can charge for advertising. Articles about science and especially health generally draw a lot of traffic to sites and get a lot of activity on social media. Just think, would your Facebook friends be more likely to share a story about the last city council meeting or about how Twinkies can increase your happiness by at least 20%? Would you even read past the headline on either article? Katie Potter, a geologist, instructor, and researcher at Utah State University, joined me for an interview over the phone to talk about why these types of articles seem to spread so easily.
I think it's generally safe to say that the reports that we see on Facebook that are trending or just trending anywhere on social media tend to often be too good to be true, and therefore they're not trustworthy. And I think coffee studies or chocolate studies or red wine studies are great examples of this because we want things that we enjoy doing to be good for us. And that's why studies, and I use air quotes here, that show that doing these things, like drinking red wine and coffee and eating chocolate, pick up so much press because they validate the behaviors that make us feel a bit guilty.
In addition, scientists and researchers have pressure to publish. Published articles are an important benchmark for a researcher as career incentives can be tied to them. This can sometimes lead to studies that are performed poorly. For-profit journals that care more about payment than publishing peer-reviewed sound science are also a major issue. Another problem is that large corporations sponsor their own reports, usually undercover. For example, Coca-Cola spends millions of dollars to research whether soda is linked to obesity and gives money to organizations like the European Hydration Institute. Don't let this get you down though. There's so much good science happening right now as well. It's important that we learn to recognize good information when we see it. So how do we do that? The secret may lie in the ability to read laterally.
It's a tool that's pretty simple to use. It allows us to recognize misleading or false information based upon sort of a checklist of observations that you can make while you're reading an article. It's basically the opposite of what we're taught to do when we read something. Instead of reading the article in its entirety and digesting it, lateral reading means that you go through and pick the parts of the article apart.
Lateral reading means that you critically analyze the basics of the study before you get into the details. It doesn't have to take long, but it can help you decide what information you should trust. First, look at which website published the information.
With a website, determine if it's created by a reputable agency, whether it's funded by the chocolate lobby. You can find out this information by doing a little bit of background research on the web page using Google or clicking the About page that's featured on many web pages. Especially reputable ones will tell you who's funding the web page and what the organization's goals are in featuring that article.
Open up a new browser tab and do some quick research. Is the website you're on reputable? What's their motivation? If the article is about the benefits of red wine and the site is funded by a wine manufacturer's trade group, you should probably be wary of what the article is saying. Reputable journals are ranked and receive scores based on how often their research is cited and used. Be extra cautious if the journal is for-profit or known for their quick or non-existent review periods. Also, spend some time Googling the authors of the study. What are their backgrounds? Is there anything concerning about them or the institutions they work for? This type of quick research is what lateral reading is all about. It is meant to give you an overview of where the study is coming from and what ulterior motives could exist. When it comes to reading about the study itself, Luke Ganji-Wellman recommends looking at the core claim of the article.
Here's the thing about science. You know it's real science if the person who is describing it to you has absolutely no confidence in what they are saying. That's a really crude way of saying it, but a good scientist will never tell you that they have proved something. A good scientist will never tell you that this thing that they have created will be the cure for what you need. A good scientist will never have a solve all. It doesn't exist. Science is an attempt at explanation. It is an attempt at explaining this crazy, nonsensical world that we live in. And quite frankly, we're wrong a lot of the time. And so as scientists, it's really, really crucial that we don't just go off the deep end and say, oh, we know this. We know this for sure, because we don't know anything for sure.
So if I come across an article that has irrefutable evidence that drinking 4 cups of coffee is going to solve all of my problems, get rid of student debt, then I should probably think twice.
I mean, that sounds really cool. Like, oh, that sounds so enticing. I would totally do that. I would drink 4 cups of coffee a day. But also, yeah, it's bogus. Throw it out.
Sensationalized wording might be good for driving web traffic, but it's not generally a good sign for science. It might be tempting to assume we will always have shocking new findings from studies, but that's just not the case.
I think, unfortunately, we have a pretty limited view of what science is. So many of us learned the scientific method in grade school, and this, I think, largely paints science as having a beginning and an end. So it starts out with a question and ends with a discovery, and that's a pretty misleading way of looking at it. It's actually more of a process. It's more of a framework for making observations and interpretations and predicting patterns in nature. So it really doesn't have a beginning and an end, and it definitely doesn't produce absolute truth.
You can also look to see how many subjects participated in the study. Good science does not rely on the experiences of a few people. It should be based on a large, randomized sample. Subjects should not be cherry-picked to fit the researcher's criteria without very good reason. You can also ask a seemingly obvious question. Did it even include people?
Recognize what the study was conducted upon. So if it was a study that explored the link between red meat and Alzheimer's disease, make sure to see whether that study was conducted on mice or humans, because it's a big leap between rodent and human physiologies.
Rats and mice are important for research, but you can't apply learnings from mice directly to humans. It doesn't work that way unless your name is Peter Pettigrew.
This is Scabbers, by the way. Pathetic, isn't it?
Last of all, you can search to see if the research is supported by other similar experiments. Good science is repeatable and reliable. Science doesn't have to be learned only through the internet either. There might be opportunities to learn near your own home.
Any type of event that is labeled as a STEM event or a STEAM event, those are usually not just for kids. If you're an adult and you are at, let's say, the farmer's market, and there's a stand that's talking about STEAM stuff, like, yeah, you can bring your kids there and they can learn something, but you can learn something too. And so just keeping an open mind as an adult and going around the community and finding these events, you can find a lot of cool things.
And whether it's through a museum, a book, or online, when you find and learn about trustworthy, cool science, share it and use it in your own life.
I think it makes us make good decisions. Especially now, we see really, I think, sinister problems with not being able to recognize the validity of science. Confusing and false scientific reporting causes us to doubt valid science, such as climate change, anthropogenic climate change, the effectiveness of vaccinations, and even the roundness of planet Earth. These things have been accepted by the scientific community, but we're kind of being conditioned to doubt them. So it's really important to have good science education and to fund science so that people can be bigger players, bigger members of the scientific community, so that they can recognize good science and communicate to others good science, and we can sort of all grow together in our collective knowledge instead of reverting back to the days when scientific discoveries were less accepted by the population.
And that's the show today. Feel free to email me at nelsonalec20@gmail.com. That's NELSONALEK20@gmail.com with any questions or to let me know how you liked the episode. Huge thank you to Katie Potter and Luke Ganji-Wellman for their time. Also wanted to attribute the audio from the Coffee News montage. It is in the Hall of the Mountain King from Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license, creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0. See you next time on In Defense of Science.